Yeah, very good morning, one and all present here. Myself, Dr. P. Janagaratnam, Assistant Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, SNS College of Technology. In my previous video series, I already discussed about the planar mechanisms and what are the basic two types of planar mechanisms and all discussed. Today, I am going to discuss about the single and double slider crank mechanisms and what are the basic fundamental concepts are incorporated in that planar mechanisms and applications. So generally, single and double slider crank means in our single slider crank mechanisms, we are only having the single slider. Based on the crank rotations, the slider will be moves through the either forward direction or reverse directions. At the same concept, instead of single slider, we are using the double slider means that is called known as double slider crank mechanisms. So what is mean by slider crank mechanism means we are giving the one types of motions. The crank will be rotated in that clockwise direction of 0 to 360 degree. We are giving the rotary motions which will be converted into any one kind of linear motion. So this is the basic working concept of or working principle of our slider crank mechanisms. The basic types of four-bar link mechanisms, motions conversions, and two primary types. So generally, it can be three rotary joints, one sliding joints. So the rotary motion is converted into sliding means linear motions. The motion conversion is transforms rotary motion into the reciprocating linear motions. Because we are giving the rotary motions, the crank will be rotated in that clockwise direction of rotary motions. So from that crank rotations, the slider movement will be an linear movement in that horizontal directions. So what are the basic two types of slider crank mechanism means? First one is single slider crank mechanism. It is having the one slider, and second one is double slider crank mechanism, which is having the two sliders. And this is the some of the anatomy of single slider crank mechanisms. What are the basic key component means crank, connecting rod, slider which slides linearly, and the frame which is the fixed base. And the other examples of piston engine mechanisms which will be available in our petrol engines. So the crank rotation directly drive piston reciprocation, which means based on the crank rotations, the piston will be moves through the either forward direction or the reverse direction. And another one is for the stroke length. In an inline slider crank mechanism, the stroke length which is equal or twice the radius. And this is the some of the inversions and applications of slider crank mechanisms like reciprocating engine mechanism, air compressors, and crank. And some of the second inversions like Whitworth quick return mechanisms, and third inversion is like oscillating cylinder engine mechanism, and last one is hand pump. Wherever we are using the hand pump, this is also the inversion single slider crank mechanisms. So, and another one is the double slider crank mechanism, which consists of two sliders each moving along the one guides, and crank and coupler which is connects to the two sliders, and complex motions which converts the rotation into the two linear reciprocating motions. And the double slider crank mechanisms, and some of the key feature means synchronized slider movements and precise the controls in machineries and used in pumps and engines and various manufacturing devices, and it enables the intricate and specific motion path. And the visual comparisons of basic comparisons between the single and the double slider crank mechanisms. Single slider, which is having only one slider, moves linearly. In our double slider crank mechanism, we are having the two sliders which will move linearly. And the simpler motions conversions, here the most complex conversions will be taken care because of the double slider motions. And basic reciprocating motions, it enables the balancing and intricate path which will decide the linear motions. This is the basic comparisons of both single and double acting slider crank mechanisms. And the balancing and performance enhancements means often requires the counterweights to minimize the vibration as well as the smooth operations when compared to the double slider crank mechanisms. And what are the modern applications means wherever we using the high speed applications, we have to use this kind of slider mechanisms. So this is the some of the real world applications which will be the single and double slider crank mechanisms which will be used for the societal impacts like internal combustion engines. All the automobile sectors having the internal combustion engine sir, which runs the vehicle. And second one is Scotch yoke mechanisms and precision pumps like the fixed displacement pump, fixed displacement unidirectional pumps, which we are using this kind of single slider mechanism. And this is the conclusions why we have to select the slider crank mechanism means it is a crucial part for converting the rotary into linear motions, and the multiple inversions which can be incorporated means we have to easily convert the motion types, and continuous improvements in the efficiency as well as the overall performance. This is the some of the key summary points as well as why we have to select this kind of slider crank mechanism. This is the matter why we have to select this kind of crank mechanisms. So this is the overall mind map summaries of these today's topics like motion conversions and what are the basic types configurations and applications and operating characteristics. So this is the assessment questions. What is the fundamental motions conversions performed by the slider crank? Which it second one is the correct answer. Rotary motion is converted into the linear motion, and second one a link with connections of three different points allowing to connect these three other links are known as the option is quaternary link, which will be connected to the quaternary point. So this is the sum of the reference which will be used to develop this PPT of slider crank mechanisms. Thank you. In our next sessions, I have discussed about the one more new topic. Thank you.